Why is this taking so long? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Badgerpod Nerdcast number 52, PCU. I'm your host, Brian Martinez, and I am joined by our friends and fellow Badgers. So I will go quickly and introduce everyone we have here. We got Rachel Edwards. Say hi, Rachel.
Hi, everybody. I'm treading water. I'm going to be all right.
Yes, he's experiencing the flood right now, and
I didn't build an ark. I should have. Brandon told me to build an ark, and I didn't.
We are in the lifeboats, though. And dancing. All right, we also have Mad Cat. Say hello, Mad Cat. Or something clever.
I'm hating YouTube these days because I put it on mute, and then it doesn't stay on mute.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Okay, it's done. I apologize.
All right, that was awesome. Next we have Hannah Wallen. Hannah.
I swear, all of the mute issues, every single one of them is all a Google curse. It's just attacking all of us. It's Google misogyny.
Yeah, Google hates us. Well, Google ideas, right? This is how it starts. We have Mike Stephenson.
One fucking day. I should have never told you my real name. You can pronounce random account.
Candemarander?
So it's episode 52, is it? If you haven't had the Joker by now, then it's the next card.
Yes. It's either over your heads or it's not that funny. And then lastly, we have Geek?
Yeah, Scott. You can call me Scott. Scott Hall is the name. Nice to meet you. I already met you. I met you at Tron, so it was okay.
Yes, and welcome back.
Thank you. Am I special still or not? Or have I worn that out?
Have you what now?
I was a special guest last time. Am I special this time also, or have I worn that out?
Yeah, you can be special one more time, and then your snowflake status is revoked.
Okay.
You melt into the drift with the rest of us.
Nice. I like
Some
it.
of us were never special.
It's like if you shake it more than twice.
Except you, Mike. You're always special.
Mike has got that special hat, though, that I love so much.
We've got a special bus just for you. It's fun size for convenience.
Special
Lots of things about me are special.
Yeah.
Special
and
like
by
Olympics.
special, we mean wingdings.
Like my needs.
All right, I think I've introduced everyone, and if I forgot you, then it's by blaming autism or something. So we're gonna go into the mailbag. So first letters. We're gonna get into that. Matt L writes, in a podcast, you asked listeners to send in their guilty pleasure movie title. Mine is Sgt. Pepper. It was a way over the top melodrama with a dose of 70s psychedelic thrown in. Second on my list would be The President's Analyst, but the Badgers are too young to remember that era. Hey, how do you know? Anybody know what The President's Analyst is?
Nope.
All right. What about
I
Sergeant?
believe it's a porn.
No, it's not.
No, that's The President's Analyst. That's
But
The
I haven't
President's
watched it.
Analyst.
I know what it is, but I haven't watched it.
Okay. What about the other one, Sergeant Pepper? Is that
I have that movie.
Is that based
Isn't
on
that
the?
Sgt. Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club?
Is it the Beatles album made into a long music video
Yeah,
essentially?
that's the Beatles movie. Yeah, the cartoon.
Oh no,
Movie,
the
basically.
cartoon is Yellow Submarine.
Yeah, we have that
Oh,
one.
is it?
But
Yeah, there's
think
actually
we
a
also have
movie.
Sgt. Pepper.
See, I don't know. I don't
called-
like the Beatles,
Yeah,
so.
it's
I
called
know
Surgeon.
of it. I just
Lonely
haven't
Hearts.
watched it.
Oh, Rachel, you were saying?
Yeah, it's. I've heard about this film. I have not seen it. I'm trying to remember what people were playing Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or who were playing the characters. I can't remember, but I think it was a really weird ass cast. If I can remember. Oh fuck.
I may have seen it, but when I did, I'm sure I was in a different mental state at the time, and I couldn't tell you a fucking thing about it.
I think I know what mental state you were in, and it's brought to you by the letters T, H, and C.
Mike, since you're over there, did you ever see it? Ever hear of it?
No, you think it'd be pretty big over here, but I've never seen it on TV. I don't know anyone who's ever like rented it or even watched it on the internet. I think everyone's quietly embarrassed about all the cartoons and the films the Beatles did. I get the feeling they're all terrible because they never play them anywhere.
Is it like one of those things that's kind of like San Francisco? Nobody actually eats rice-a-roni there, even though it's the San Francisco treat. It's that kind of thing.
That makes sense. Apparently, we eat jellied eels over here in London. Never fucking seen them. I don't know what anyone's talking about.
Oh, fucking lies. All of it's lies. All right. Well, if you guys know anything about this movie, then feel free to comment, because I don't know. I think I saw it, but I was high. Okay, so next, James writes, "Sup, shitlords?" Well, hello, James. Wanted to give you guys a massive shout-out. A really big, thick, throbbing shout-out. I've been aware of you since the Calgary Expo crap that went down, but you kind of flew under my radar until only the last week or so. I've been having a shit time going through some depression stuff and a bunch of crap that came at a bad time. I've been listening to you nonstop, and you've all been a massive help. I don't really have the words. I'm stumbling clumsily through this, trying to avoid a sob story. You have helped me to feel that there are people there who care. That whilst we may live in a world where feminism and hatred, if often indirect, of men has become the norm, there are good people fighting against it, calling out bullshit, but having fun with it, and not just getting wrapped up in mindless reactionary outrage. Teal dear, you've all done more to help me hate myself a little less. So to feel like I'm a little less of a failure, to feel less alone with my opinions and how I view the world. Anyhow, onto the topic discussion. I was going to beg you to do an extended look at modern comics, as I've heard you touch on them a little here and there, but it looks like there's already an episode from 2 months back I haven't reached yet. Instead, I just want to hear more about masculinity, men, maleness, the stuff that's so often glossed over in favor of only women mattering or being worthy of attention, studies, and policy. I mean, shit, I've been a therapist in the last year, or I've seen a therapist in the last year to try and work through some shit and try to process and heal after getting raped by an ex, my partner at the time, now ex, being pushy, not respecting boundaries, and trying to manipulate me into consent, which left me a bit stressed to say the least. The response given from people around me, man up and take care of your woman, or hurry up and get married, or you're lucky yours actually wants sex, or stop being such a pussy, you've got nothing to complain about, or stop being so dramatic, men can't get raped. From my trained health professional, just lay there and let her do it for a bit, you might get into it and then it's not a problem. Anyhow, enough drama, badgery-doos. That's new. Keep up the damn fine work and expect to see me shitpost in the chat from time to time when your shows aren't airing at 4 to 5 a.m. locally. Kind regards, James. Wow.
Honestly, if a mental health professional is telling him that, I would get recordings of that and post it online, because that's horrible.
And then I would find a different mental health professional, because that one's not doing his job.
No.
Or her job.
No.
In fact, it's actually, this might be something to write to the medical board about if you have the energy. Okay, somebody's echoing and needs to mute. Okay, there we go. But yeah, this might be something to, and you can actually look up online the address for your state's medical board and the reporting process. But your mental health professional or any other health professional should never tell you that you should just lay there and take it, and you might get into it when you've told them that you've been raped or that you've been sexually assaulted in any way. It doesn't matter what sex you are. It doesn't matter what sexuality you are. It doesn't matter if you're cisgender or transgender. There is no factor that you can possibly have as part of who you are that can justify telling you to just lay there and take it. That's ridiculous. That's like it's almost, I would go as far as to call it malpractice for a health professional to tell somebody that, because it's damaging to their health. And if they actually get a person to believe that, then that person goes and acts on it, then that person will damage themselves further by tolerating something that they should never put up with.
But one other thing to touch on something Hannah said about finding a new professional. Unfortunately, people graduate college, psychiatrists graduate college with a feminist viewpoint, looking through the feminist lens and doing everything they can to attack males. And this therapist you have probably graduated with that mindset. So if you're looking for a new professional, do your research on them, find out whatever you can about them, and interview them a little bit. Don't tip your hand on what you're trying to do, but ask them some solid questions right away, because they're there to help you, not you help them. And there are some good ones out there who will actually try to help you. But just be aware, there are many out there who just want to blame men for everything, and that's what this therapist is doing to you.
Yeah, like so often our advice to is to get therapy. Like if you can trigger warnings or anxieties or whatever. If you can't handle this, then you need to get therapy, and that's often our fallback advice. But even that's not, the end of the story, because there are some therapists out there who really aren't very scientific about this.
I was going to mention Tara Palmatier is a good therapist that actually has men in mind. She is the Shrink for Men. Hannah, where can people find her? And maybe she can direct them to others that sort of have the same special concerns for men, or at least don't have a lack of empathy for them.
Her website is shrinkformen.com. It's the word shrink followed by the number 4 followed by the word men all together with no underscores or anything .com. So it's shrink4men.com.
Yeah, she's a great lady too, and very funny and personable. So thank you for your letter, James. And if you want, I would recommend reaching out to her. I think that she can help you out.
She's an evil panda. She invented the concept of honey badgers, and her name's Dr. Ra, so she's clearly an evil panda, a ginger one.
That's right. That's right. All right, next letter. Pure Cut Anon has made an inquiry. It's taken me ages to figure this out, and every frigging time I've heard his voice, it's been irking me, but I finally figured out who Otter Jesus' voice reminds me of. He's got the voice of Mr. Slave from South Park. Next time he's on, would you be kind enough to ask him to say Jesus Christ, please? I'm not familiar with Mr. Slave. I'm afraid I'm
Jesus Christ.
No, I already told him that. I think it was a while back. I think I already told Otter Jesus that it was like, and I actually told him to be like, I'm super. Thanks for asking. All things considered.
Oh, okay. Now Mr. Slave is the leather man.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry, that was a different guy. But yeah, Mr. Slave is a kind of like, oh, Jesus Christ. Yes, I know.
Oddly enough, the voice of the frog up the gay man's ass is also Otter Jesus' voice.
Oh God. I was like,
or was it
God.
The Catatafish? Oh.
I don't know. Catatafish. No, Catatafish is different. I think it's. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Otter Jesus also does a really mean meatwad.
Yeah,
from
he does.
Protein Hunger Force.
He does. Really
I mean, but basically, if you can just do that voice, you can do meatwad. So, but yeah. So we will ask him. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind. Blippity Blop has made an inquiry. I have been following you guys for a while, and very much like what I see, particularly when you discuss game themselves. What? Okay. I'm curious as to what games you're all actually playing at the moment, and if you ever just have a hangout where you speak specifically about games themselves, as in hangout only on the games. Would love to take part in such a hangout if that were ever on the cards. Keep up the good work, Blip. Well, thank you, Blip, for your kind words. Yeah, Mad Cat, you can go ahead and mention that.
Well, I'm starting up a group. We've done a couple of videos already. We're called Red Pill Gamers. We also, by that website name is Red, well, redpillgamers.com. We've so far done the not Stanley Parable, that's the next one. We've done Spec Ops The Line, where we're basically shitlords. We're just laughing and making fun of everything. But once in a while we get serious and talk about the art of the game and the issues, more specifically war and men's rights. And we just got done having like a complete discussion where we were very serious about it. But we're just sitting around talking about video games. And we don't do that live, though. We do a pre-recording, and then we upload it on YouTube.
All right, and we actually are getting. I'm currently upgrading my computer, but we're going to be starting something pretty soon on Honey Badger Radio as well. So be on the lookout for that. It'll probably be live, and it'll probably be done through Twitch. As far as what I'm playing currently, I'm currently knee-deep in 2 games at once. I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 5 because I don't get a chance to play games, so I'm a little behind everyone else. And whenever I do, I try to, stream it on Twitch. I also am playing Bloodborne, which I also haven't finished because I've been really busy with stuff. So, and I upload that on Twitch, and I love them both. Yeah, that's what I'm playing. So, anybody else got anything that they're
I just
playing?
retro game and casual game because I'm a fucking hipster.
Oh,
I'm a hipster who's not even a gamer. There you go.
Actually, I think Mike, isn't the game you're currently playing called After Effects?
Yeah, it's pretty fucking addictive. Yeah, and basically just editing funny people.
Do you know all the shortcuts?
Oh no, the keyboard shortcuts.
I know all those keyboards.
I Control C and Control V are the only fucking ones I ever use.
Yeah,
I know some keyboard shortcuts.
I forgot all my shortcuts, but yeah.
Like I have to know those mostly for Illustrator though.
Yes.
Photoshop.
I've been playing a game for the last week, if I can talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, you can talk about it.
I've been engulfed in the Rainbow Six Siege beta test on the Xbox One, and kind of loving it. It's kind of fantastic, and yeah, and that's about it. It's just great, and I love it. And that's about it.
All right.
Shit. I'm losing time with them because they're all playing Rainbow Six Siege beta.
Rachel, are you
it's so
playing
good.
anything?
It's so addictive. I love it.
Oh god, I typically I'm playing Minecraft like a filthy casual, but no, not anything recently.
Aren't you still playing Minecraft though?
Yes, I am still playing Minecraft.
It's always going on.
No, all the things.
I've seen her house. It's very nice, and the town she built.
Yeah, I built a town, but then people started pranking it, and so they put things like they put dogs in like one of the houses, and then they accused me of running an illegal dog fighting ring, and so and then Schultz Brigade like put a gay bar in town. Decided to put that there and.
I want to take it to a gay bar.
Exactly, that was the whole thing. There was all kinds of things, and then people took the place where I was breeding the cats to keep the neighborhood safe, and turned it into a Chinese food restaurant. And so, and then filled the mosque that I built with pigs.
What game is this?
Minecraft.
Oh, you may have heard of it.
So I built a mosque called the Allahu Akbar Mosque.
You guys have a shitty walk now? Are you also gonna try and get a Whole Foods?
I also named the diner in town Karen's Diner, and because for some reason I just imagined Karen having a diner. I don't know why.
What happened to the Lacey Green Diner?
Oh no, that's the Lacey Green's House of Consent. That's in the Pirate Village.
Oh, okay.
That's what we decided to name the brothel. Lacey Green's House
my
of
God.
Consent. So yeah.
This is why I don't. Yikes! It's so much. Okay. Lastly, I guess Hannah, I'll ask you too. And he didn't specifically say video games, by the way. So.
Yeah, to be honest, the only game that I've had time for lately, I mentioned in the chat, I've been beta testing SJWs lately and found out most of them are.
Ho-ho! Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Okay.
That was mean.
No, it was funny. Let's go on to the next letter. So, the Cookie Ogre writes, that's pretty good. This is a general, if rather silly question. But if Mike, as the resident hat expert, is available to answer it, that would be ideal. Somehow, I don't know how, the fedora has become synonymous with troglodyte men, with the implication that troglodyte men is a redundancy, who either live in basements and hate women or live in basements and suck up to feminists. The tipping of a fedora is suddenly a terrible thing in many people's eyes, and this confuses me. My question is this: how can we reclaim the fedora from this political muck-flinging? The fedora is a beautiful hat. The fedora is objectively astounding and perfectly engineered to enhance both the physical prowess — Indiana Jones would have died in the first 5 minutes if he'd been wearing a baseball cap — and the sex appeal. Both Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman wore fedoras, and only increased their attractiveness thereby. You can put a fedora on an anteater and it looks badass. The anteater. The fedora didn't need the help. If Karen were ever to appear in a fedora, the critical mass of glory might cause both Censor Duck and Ononesian to spontaneously explode, and Lacey Green might possibly even stop talking for 5 minutes. So how can we stop the maligning of this truly magnificent hat? Also, Mike, is the trilby that the evil panda wears in your cartoon symbolic of anything? Is the trilby how we can tell that it's evil? Or is the trilby just sort of a stealth fedora? With the disturbed, depraved, and hat-wearing appreciation, the Cookie Ogre. Well, thank you, Cookie Ogre, for your letter. I actually own a fedora, and yeah, I want this question answered. Not that it matters, I'm going to wear it anyway, but...
Right, well, excellent question. Simply magnificent question. Well, first of all, the evil panda's trilby. Gangsters wear trilbies. It's sort of, and I don't know what Undertakers wear, but it's sort of like a wide rim trilby. It's much like sort of Mikaru's sort of Goat Skull setup. He's dressed like an Undertaker, and the evil panda's sort of dressed like an Undertaker. The fedora thing's much more complicated. You'll have probably noticed that MRAs don't wear fedoras. Hipsters do. And hipster is pretty much synonymous with feminist. So their approach to the fedora is kind of nothing to do with what they see in MRAs, because they don't see anything in MRAs. Just like they don't see anything in Gamergate. There is no sort of common accessory at all. But what they've done, the feminists, the hipster feminists, is looked around them and seen the men who are on their side. Because it's fucking feminist men who wear fedoras, and this is them going, look, we have a stereotype set up for you, all of you like weakling, sort of frail hipster guys who wear fedoras and are feminists. If you for 1 second even think about advocating for men's rights in any given situation, then we have a chalk outline of Beelzebub drawn just for you. We are ready to call you a stereotypical MRA, and the moment you say stop mutilating babies, we're going to point and laugh at your fedora and your beard and say, ha ha ha, now you're the devil. That's basically how it works.
Well, actually, there was a guy who, a hipster, not necessarily an MRA, who wore a trilby in his videos, and he said a bunch of stuff that pissed off feminists, and they decided to associate, because they can't tell the difference between the trilby and the fedora. They called his hat a fedora and began associating all things that pissed them off with fedoras, and that is actually where it came from. I cannot remember who the it was a YouTuber, but I cannot remember who the YouTuber was that actually did that. But that's the origin.
Okay, I have a couple things to say about this, and this is just something that I've come to understand just from understanding internet culture. Typically, the situation with the fedora is sort of complicated, but I will try and break it down as easy as possible. What the fedora has come to represent is that sort of, I would say, that pocket of nerds that really really like I don't know, things that are old-fashioned, and they think it's really really cool and stuff like that. But unfortunately, they are unable to pull it off, and so typically people have sort of started shaming those kinds of individuals who like what they like, even if they don't particularly look good in it. And that's become sort of synonymous, like with you're a basement-dwelling loser. And so a basement-dwelling loser, of course, doesn't respect women, and all these things, all of the things that people typically associate with the sort of person that is kind of going nowhere in life, they have it's sort of coalesced into a single stereotype about a man with a neckbeard who lives in his mother's basement and plays video games and thinks trilbies and fedoras are cool. I think that's about that's pretty much sums up the situation. But fedoras aren't necessarily bad. I mean, Indiana Jones pretty much rocked that pretty good.
As I understand it, the Indiana Jones hat is a Stetson, which is a variety of fedora, I believe.
Yeah. I think there's many different varieties. Unfortunately, most people don't understand what variety is going to look good with their particular head shape, and that's actually one of the things to remember when you're going for any sort of hat, because not everyone's going to look in every single kind of hat. It's just not going to look good.
If I may be so bold.
Yes, go on.
I think part of it might have to do with the fact that when you see the pictures, many catalogs of these pictures of these guys doing this, half the time you see this guy wearing a trilby or a fedora or whatever, and they're wearing like a comic book T-shirt with it, or they're not fully embracing the stylistic ethic of the hat and what it all entails. They're kind of half-stepping. It's like, oh, I've got this hat, it's really cool, but I've got a Dora the Explorer shirt on, or something stupid like that. So.
Or they'll wear it with a goth coat or something like that. Like, yeah. Oh, I have this goth coat left over from the 90s and early 2000s. Better put that on with it.
The Matrix, I watched the Matrix trench coat.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't understand style as an entirety. They think that just the hat does it. Oh yeah, the hat's so pimp, Yeah.
The hat is.
But you have to get the right sort of hat that's going to give off your features, and the fedora is not something that's going to make everyone look fantastic, unfortunately.
I mean, you look at Indiana Jones, and he has the entire look. He's not just wearing the fedora and a USC shirt or something like that.
I mean, all these people had like the trench coat, the proper trench coat, not the black trench coat, the sort of I'm trying to remember.
The duster.
Yeah, and the suit and everything like that. It's all part of the same look, and the hair is done just so and everything like that. So it's
well, even when it was really really common to wear the suit, the fedora or whatever, not everybody wore the same hat. I mean, just for an odd example, if you ever look back at old Abbott and Costello footage, if they're both wearing hats, you'll notice that they do not wear the same type of hat. If I recall correctly, let's see, Costello wore a bowler hat, and Abbott wore a fedora, and Costello wore a bowler. So it makes a big difference how it sits, basically how it suits your face, how it suits your overall shape, and your personality.
It's all about finding a good fit for who you are. But I think that I have a theory that then maybe the roots of it is what Hannah had said earlier about that one YouTuber that wore them a lot. But I think there's something else too, and I don't. This is just a theory. It's just my thinking. I think the fedora is often used to not only criticize MRAs, but just criticize men that are generally critical of feminism in general. And I think the reason is because it's sort of like calling someone old-fashioned. Like there's essentially the fedora, it's not intended this way, but I think there's a symbol of masculinity in a classic sense there. Like it's of another time when, and I'm saying this with like scare quotes, when men were men and they wore suits and took off their hat at the door and they kissed their wife, and that kind of thing. It's almost like holding on to this traditional image of manhood from from the patriarchal height, and they're basically saying you're just these guys that want this back, you know. And I think for me that's what it seems like, because it gets thrown around so much, and it's not like like Rachel mentioned, that it's not just directed at MRAs, but also atheists, and maybe just generally like guys that like old-fashioned clothes, or I like wearing suits and and hats and stuff too. But it's a fashion thing for me. But I think that the other thing would be is that I would be seen as someone who is holding on to like an old way of thinking, and that's a way of shaming masculinity. Really, it's like saying you're old. You're thinking like a patriarch, like a classic nuclear family dad.
It's also a cliquish thing, and this is a common behavior among like girls in cliques. Really, the idea of if you can't find something legitimate to criticize about a person that you want to outgroup, that you want to exclude from your clique, you start nitpicking their fashion choices, and it doesn't really even matter if their fashion choices deserve being nitpicked. It doesn't matter if they look stupid or if they look awesome. If you and your whole crowd nitpick together, then within the circle of friends that you have, the person becomes, crappy looking. And this is sort of a way of establishing an outgroup that where they don't really have anything rational to say about the group. They don't really have a criticism that isn't going to sound actually hateful or petty. And so they decide to start making fun of things about men that make them masculine, like their beards and their hats and their coats and their clothes, things that make them that are identifying characteristics, that you would look at a guy, well, that's a masculine appearance. But it's more of an outgrouping thing. It's more of a cliquish thing, and it has a lot to do with, like, they latched on to the initial making fun of that guy basically because they don't really have anything better to say than that, anything more relevant or valid to say than that.
Yeah, it's really an ad hom. Mad Cat?
Well, I'm going to touch on both of y'all's points, but for Hannah real quick, I was looking my Twitter today, and apparently Mercedes said that she's being attacked for having a lazy eye, which she doesn't have one. That's the best they can attack with. They can't attack her on her points. They have to attack her beauty. But to go on what you were saying, Brian, about this old-fashioned sense, I think you have something there. Because perhaps the two most famous people who wore a fedora, that's real, would be Frank Sinatra and Tom Landry. Now, Frank Sinatra, of course, was a singer, but for those who don't know, Tom Landry was a NFL coach back in the 60s and 70s and was considered still today the best coach of all time. And he was notable for wearing a fedora. And I think this does kind of go back that people who wore fedoras were like a class unto themselves, that they were the representation of what a man was supposed to be stylish, supposed to be sophisticated. All the women wanted to be him, and I think that part of the hatred of the fedora, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I think part of it does come from this idea of this was the idealized man. This is what every man wanted to be, was a man who wore a fedora. So I do think that culture does play a big part into the hatred of men wearing fedoras, even though many men today don't.
I just got to say one thing about attacking Mercedes over having a lazy eye, even though she doesn't. And to be honest, if she did, the thing is, it's the same as attacking somebody for having to walk with a cane, or for having one leg shorter than the other, so they have to have a special shoe, or for missing a finger. or any minor handicap. It's not a major handicap. They're not in a wheelchair. They're not hooked up to a machine. They don't have to have a specific regimen of drugs to survive or anything like that. But having a lazy eye is a handicap. It's a minor handicap. It causes vision issues if it's bad enough, if it's a particularly bad case of it. And it can cause severe headaches and all kinds of things. And for them to just, it's bad enough that they're attacking her as a physical appearance thing. But this is the same ideology that came up with ableism. And what do you think they're doing there when they attack her as having a lazy eye? That would be ableism. It might not be obvious ableism because they're not attacking somebody for being in a wheelchair, but it's still ableism.
Oh, but they don't care because Mercedes is the enemy. She's not womaning right. So that, of course, all bets are off when you're the right kind of target. And
I think lazy eyes are sexy.
Yeah, maybe. Well, apparently a lot of people do because the wanking continues, regardless as to whatever Mercedes' flaws might be. It apparently isn't enough to keep her from having a job.
Yeah, it certainly has
Tom
an
York
impact.
would be less sexy without a lazy eye, and not to mention vernaculars. I've said it before and I'll say it again, your imperfections are the sexiest thing about you.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
A thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
Yeah, I know. It's the imperfections that are, I will agree, that are attractive. But people are going to start shipping you guys now.
Go for it.
Yeah.
And with regards
Rachel,
to,
you triggered me.
with regards to what Magcat said earlier, and with regards to what I said before that, it's old-fashioned, but it's also new-fashioned. Like I say, they will shut down any conversation about men's rights from whatever bullshit angle they can find, including old-fashioned and new-fashioned at the same time. Because they see that they'll project men's rights advocates as people who are sort of new-fashioned about old-fashioned things, because that's what hipsters are like. But let's not forget, feminist hipsters are capable of projecting their bullshit. It's just infinite levels, as Einstein would put it. Yeah. So they can say it's only the male hipsters that are doing the hipster sort of simultaneous old-fashioned and new-fashioned thing. It's not us. It's not like we're encouraging these men to do what we're doing. They're doing it of their own accord.
I have an idea. Guys. I have a proposal. I propose, and this may sound really messed up, but what if, I don't know, this is just an if. What if we were to start taking feminist fashion away from them? Just start colonizing all of the stuff they like.
Okay, I'll dye my hair purple.
You mean
Exactly.
Specifically?
Like the problem glasses and the hair and everything like that. That way they can't fucking tell us apart anymore. And
You saw what happened when someone invented meninism for a joke. They actually took it seriously. If we started dyeing our hair, they'd start immediately going, look at all these men's rights advocates dyeing their hair. That's so stupid. We've never done that. And the fucking media would line up with them and say, yeah, that's totally true. Feminists have never done that. That's what I'm saying with the fedora.
They'll be like, oh, we never dyed our hair crazy fucking colors and dyed our fucking armpits all rainbowy. Shit, that never do that. That's just silly.
Anything we do that is remotely sort of aesthetic based or remotely capable of being called narcissistic, they will jump on us immediately and say, look at how shallow these people are, and they'll move on to another kind of shallow and pretend that that's just them being themselves.
But I'm kind of tired of the rainbow headed she beasts, to be honest. It's fucking scary.
The only answer is to fuck all the aesthetics completely and try and stick to the statements. I mean, that doesn't work either, but it's the only bedrock thing.
Wait, are you trying to say that a substantive argument is something that we should strive for?
I know, it's revolutionary, isn't it?
I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this right now.
Rarely works. against the kind of people we're talking about. They actually find like candy silver hair a more convincing argument than a substantive statement. But we're gonna have to meet not necessarily 50% in the middle, but maybe 95% in the middle. Let's put a red streak in our hair and come with a
what if we
decent
just-
argument.
Or what if we just came up with the most ridiculous thing we could think of, or just something that would just be so difficult to think was terrible, like I don't know, like cat hats or something, with the little
Elbow
ears
rings.
or something like that. Just kitty ear head, like kitty ear hats or something.
I've
like that.
invented a
Something
fucking
adorable.
furry universe. If that doesn't do it
I
for the
know.
third wave
No,
Tumblr rights, I don't know what will.
Kitty ear hats are already taken. Cat hats are already, but elbow rings are not. Nobody does elbow rings. We just like take the skin right over here.
No.
Why don't
Just
we wear
don't
like
hit your
one
funny
of those wolf heads as a helmet?
There we go.
Those big horse masks that people just randomly wear.
Oh god.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh my gosh! Look at those MRAs with their
Plague
horse
Doctor.
with
Plague
their
Doctor.
horse heads.
Plague Doctor masks. We could just run around in Plague Doctor masks.
yeah.
Oh yeah, plague doctors. Yeah.
And that would have the dual effect of creeping our opponents out so much that they would run away because they'd be too afraid to argue with us.
And it would increase the plague doctor mask market by
Exactly. I love those.
Do you mean like the little surgical masks?
No,
Yeah.
No.
the ones with the really
Like-
long nose, the pointy nose.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, like the gas mask.
Yeah, so it makes
Yeah.
it makes you
Right.
look like a bird or something.
Right. See, I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about like the little surgical masks, and people would be like,
And then you just
"Oh, I think they're making fun of Asian people and bird flu." Oh my god.
and then just show up in like this big trench coat kind of deal with the hat as well, and just be like,
Yeah.
you guys are a plague, basically.
The sacrifices you make for men's rights.
There we go.
All right, because it's a sickness, so we're trying not to catch it. All right, let me move on to the next letter because we got 2 more to go. All right, Kuguru Sahara has made an inquiry. Hello, Badgers. Thank you for reading my quick message. I'll get the major letter out as soon as I have the guts to know what I want to write. This will be quick. Have you guys heard of a film called MS-45 or Miss 45? I've mentioned this film before in the comments, but it might have been overlooked. It's an old exploitation film directed by Abel Ferrara. It was screened at the BAM, Brooklyn Academy Museum, in New York City in 2014 as part of their Vengeance is Hers lineup. The film has it all: street harassment, rape culture. Who gets raped twice in one day? Anyone? Chauvinistic pigs. All men are sexual deviants. All men are evil. Strong female character. A nosy dog. A nosy neighbor. Low-budget cops and a party. In a way, you can't help but laugh at this film. If anything, you'll laugh a lot. By the film's end, some feminists who attended decided to shame the audience on how disgusting they were for laughing at this woman's rape. This woman, despite how the plot was set up, went far from staying helpless. If anything, she turned out to be a crazy-ass bitch. You need to see this film, and as I think it might fit into some of the topics you've discussed. Sincerely, Kuguru Sahara. Well, I don't know if I'm ready for another one of those fucking movies for a while. My life is a nightmare. Does any of you have thought on this?
Still got a raging to do on that fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is one of those low budget films that I haven't seen. There have been people that have told me to watch it, but the last time somebody told me to watch a similar film, I was just like, this is nothing like you said it was going to be. So I haven't. But this came out actually before I was. Yep, here it is. I'm waiting for it to load up. The Wikipedia on it says 1981. So this came out even before I was in junior high. So this is old.
Oh, is it the same movie? Because the one that this person's talking about, he said he watched it in 2014. It was screened.
Well, if this article is accurate, which it is Wikipedia, so it's might be, but it might not be. But it says here it was acquired by Alamo Drafthouse Films in October 2013 and remastered in HD from original negatives. The distributor released the film on Blu-ray, DVD, and a digital copy in March 2014. So it may be that it was just re-released in the theaters.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
That would be not remade.
Right. That makes sense. Here's a bit of irony. The guy in the letter, he describes the film, and this is probably true because if it came out in the 70s, there were a lot of exploitation movies. Because theaters were popping up all over the place that were really cheap, and they played these little low-budget grindhouse films, and they were big on just having as much gore or language or sexuality or themes in them that we didn't really do before then that often, and most of it was just for shock value, and the films themselves were usually not very deep or involved, but they just existed for that. That's why they call them exploitation films. But I wonder, can a film be both an exploitation film and also, if you absorb it or react to it as though it's an exploitation film where everything is really over the top and overly violent and exaggerated, should you then still take it seriously? Because if the audience was laughing and the feminists got really upset.
Well, it sounds to me just from looking at the article, this is very similar to the 1978 I Spit on Your Grave, where like the main character gets raped in the beginning of the film or at some point early in the film, and everything she does after that is because she was raped. So she's basically taking her revenge out on people. With the I Spit on Your Grave character, if I recall correctly, she only went after the people that were involved, except for one guy. And I don't know about the other film, of course, because I haven't seen it. But these are things that are like, there's one small grain of, gleeful, hey, this is vengeance, this person went through something bad, something awful happened to her, and now she's getting her own back, that some people will identify with. But it's such an over-the-top thing that you can identify with that grain of, vengeful attitude that you have when somebody does something awful to you without personalizing it to yourself, where you would think, I could do that, It's very clear that you wouldn't want to do any of the things that are in the film. It's very much like cartoon violence, where you see the old Mighty Mouse cartoons, and he comes in to beat up the bad cats, and he picks them up by the tails and swings them around and around and throws them, and they go for miles and miles. These are things that you laugh at because they're ridiculous or over the top or so obviously fake that there's no connection to real world violence. And
or you like violence against cats.
Yeah, or you like violence against cats. Yeah, there you go.
That have super strength.
But it's particularly silly to get offended over something like this because of the fact that it is so over the top and it is so campy. It's the whole point of campy movies, is to enjoy laughing at something that, if it was realistic and it was very realistically portrayed, wouldn't be entertaining at all. But because it is campy, it is entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I watched I Spit on Your Grave, and there was other movies that were like that, like Gator Bait, I remember. And they were just, I don't know, they were just so ridiculous that I didn't even take it seriously. I wonder if this film that they're talking about, if it really is trying to send that kind of message, or if they just set up the story that way, where they basically thought to themselves, what's the most vulnerable kind of character we can put, and put her through what's the worst shit we can put her through and have her survive, and then, have her get her own back. And I would, that's probably all they were thinking was, let's try to be edgier than everybody else. But of course, today we're looking at it like it's a political statement.
I mean, there's movie studios that have sort of made their entire existence about doing that, about being over the top, being far out, being bizarre, seeing how much gore and how much gross and how much whatever they can throw into a film. Look at Tromaville. If you ever watch the Nukem High movies, it's all about being odd and gross and seeing how much you can combine gore with tits and ass.
Yeah, or like what is it, Kabuki Man? I mean, they're all like really ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
So, I think that's the last. No, there's one more letter. All right. So, Chad has made an inquiry. Me equals video game and anime nerd. I was watching an anime called The Irregular at Magic High School, and a few lines really spoke to me. Now, the ones I'm going to post are slightly altered to give it more relevant context, but here they are. Quote, a world where everyone is equal and receives the same treatment. No such place exists. If there was a world of equality where talent and aptitude didn't matter, we would all be equally snubbed there. This is the result of the sweet-sounding word that someone whispered in your ear. Is it true that there are ignorant people who will look down on you, but did you have no one around to acknowledge you? Was your gender the only barometer by which you could be measured? Your skills, your looks, these are a part of you. They are what define you, do they not? What exactly were you seeking from society? In the end, no one despised you more for being a woman than yourself. End quote. Anyway, you all have a nice day now. Chad Kameda, Calgary. Okay, well, thank you, Chad. That's a really good and thoughtful quote. And once again, it shows that Japan don't give a fuck. They're going to say whatever they want. Anybody have any reaction?
Words there that the people who have the most problem with society against women is the women themselves, or more specifically, the feminists. They invent this narrative, and they're the only ones who seem to be affected by it.
And I think that last line really hit the nail on the head when it came to feminists. They really, the way that they talk about women's lives and the way they talk about women's experiences, it's quite obvious that nobody hates being women or femininity or women themselves more than feminists do. You couldn't come up with the things that they come up with. You couldn't describe being a woman the way they do without having a level of hatred involved.
Yep. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, let's get into the main topic. We're about an hour in, so we'll just go a little bit longer than normal. Hannah, which one? Hannah and Madcap both have write-ups, but who should go first?
Well, Hannah's going to read both of them. She has a better voice than I do.
Okay, Hannah, do it.
I disagree with that last statement, but going on, I'll read Mad Cat's first. I didn't get to read it before the show, but it looks like it is a good intro. And I lost the title already. Yesterday is Tomorrow by Mad Cat. Let's visit a world where people get offended over everything. There is always a cause to get riled about, and people are more interested in fighting than doing anything useful. No, this isn't our world today, but the world of the 1994 film PCU. While this film could be seen as satire of its time, given how politically correct society is becoming, it eerily predicted many elements in our society today, including rampant radical feminism, #Black Lives Matter, and that one can get a degree for anything if you knew how to bullshit with administrators. More importantly, how easy it is to piss everyone off and not try. And I'm going to move on to mine. I didn't even give it a real title, so see. This movie starts out with pre-frosh student Tom Lawrence's introduction to university life through the leader of a communal student house, once a frat house before frats on campus were decommissioned, called The Pit. James Draws Andrews leads him through a 90s version of Animal House full of comically eccentric yet relatable characters before losing track of him in the middle of a prank on a university campus completely wrapped up in political correctness and random causes. Those concepts have taken over the student body's lives, isolating various groups from each other by destroying their ability to interact rationally. It's clear from the beginning that the Pit is the one area on campus that is free from political frenzy, but Tom, who has arrived on campus in a suit expecting something much more traditional, has no idea how to navigate the maze of ideological sensibilities. This sets up the viewer to experience the plot through Tom, the story's naive young man, and Draws, the experienced hero, a wise and slightly older veteran of the university's environment. And an interesting environment it is, as Draws explains early on. It's a whole new ballgame on campus these days, and they call it PC. Tom, PC? Draws political correct. And it's not just politics, it's everything. It's what you eat, it's what you wear, and it's what you say. If you don't watch yourself, you can get in a buttload of trouble. The campus population seems to exist on the edge of a massive free-for-all or riot over the students' various political and social causes, which Tom sets off by running afoul of every group he encounters within the first hour of his visit. The movie's conflict is set up when the university's president and her ass-kissing sidekick conspire to use student complaints and a damage bill to remove the residents of the pit from campus. Running jokes, jabs at various social and political stereotypes, and a lovable group of misfits in an environment intolerant of their difference, an evil authoritarian administrator and her sidekick, and their rivalry with the hero and his cohorts, numerous misunderstandings, a drunken bash, and a minor revolt. PCU has all of the elements of a classic college rebel versus establishment comedy. It's funny, but unremarkable in either plot or humor. What makes this 20-year-old movie interesting now is that despite its age, the environment it portrays is only a hair's breadth from today's reality. It's impossible to walk across campus without traveling through a gauntlet of flyer-waving, cause-promoting students, including some who don't even know what they're shouting about. "Free Nelson Mandela!" one student yells frantically at Tom's face, only to be informed by another they already freed him. Militant womanists carry chips on their shoulders, protest at the drop of a disapproved syllable, and assail the rest of the student body with a litany of male-bashing slogans and buzzwords, fictional equivalents of those used by today's feminists and other social justice types. Cause heads embracing veganism for a week outside of the dining hall refuse to let any of the students eat because there's meat inside. Cause heads, Draws explains, adopt a world-threatening cause and stick with it for about a week before abandoning it for another, as they later demonstrate with environmental preaching and the fact that they go everywhere prepared with fold-up signs and markers in case a spontaneous protest erupts. Students are majoring in obscure subjects, not likely to help them at all in the job market, like dead languages with no modern application, or even television, as is explained in an exchange between Tom and Draws early in the movie, when Tom learns that one of the Pitt's residents' thesis is based on the constant television appearances of two actors. Draws tells Tom, "That's the beauty of college these days, Tommy. You can major in Game Boy if you know how to bullshit." The conflict between the pit crew and the PC crowd on campus leaves them with a huge bill to pay if they want to remain enrolled. In the course of solving their eviction problem, the pit crew unites the political correctness menagerie twice over common interests. First, the students discover that through a fortunate series of accidents, they can enjoy a party which boasts George Clinton as its entertainment, and they figure out they can have a good time together if they simply put politics aside for the night, making the pit party a success. Even the womanists figure out they don't have to be so confrontational, with the lead womanist noting to her cohort after watching her use overemphasized politeness to successfully negotiate for a beer, it's like, if you're nice to them, they bring you things. The second time is when the crew sabotages the president's presentation at the university's bicentennial event after learning she'll be removed and their eviction canceled if she screws anything up. Draws makes a persuasive speech, and with a little help from Tom and the audience, gets the students to start repeating, "We're not gonna protest!" The students then break into a spontaneous protest with their anti-protest chant, totally disrupting the event and getting President Garcia Thompson fired. The president's previously ass-kissing student assistant accidentally reveals his hateful nature to the other students over a live mic, and he ends up being the next person to get chased across campus by an angry mob, adding comic relief to the movie's happy ending, and proving that even a population that divided can be united when provided with a common enemy, or cause. Discuss.
Well, I want to address that particular part with Tom being chased by everyone. And, you know, on one hand, it almost seems justified while all these groups are running after him, but I really think all of these groups have themselves to blame for their hatred of Tom. We start with those causers. They're angry because Tom seems to be the one who threw meat all over them. But if you remember in that movie, early on, they threw red paint on people. And it's like they were the cause of what happened to them. It was the consequence of what happened to them. That they got meat thrown on them. They probably would have done it anyways, whether the red paint was thrown or not. But they started it by blocking people from being able to access the campus and threw red paint on people and tried to shame them. So the characters of the pit decided to retaliate and find a fitting punishment for them. Then you had the black activists get mad at him because he ran into them. Then he went into the computer lab and unplugged all the computers basically. But you know what? Those people are at fault themselves because they didn't back up their work. And I know as a writer, I've lost like days worth of work because I didn't back up. You just learn you have to back up. So, and then of course there's the whole frisbee game. Who goes to a frisbee competition only brings one frisbee? It's almost like that scene in Clerks where they only bring one one disc thingy for the game. So, you know, when I see this scene, it's like all of these people are just looking for an excuse to hate, and it's really themselves that they hate and not necessarily Tom, because they are not facing the responsibilities of their decisions, of their actions, and they're directing all of that at what? A straight white male. And that's really reminiscent of our society today, that all of these groups, these feminists, anti-gamergaters, social justice warriors, all of them are directing all of their hate at straight white men rather than taking responsibility for themselves.
What's really funny about this is that back in 1994, those portrayals, which actually fit in pretty well with today's activists, those portrayals were caricatures. They were not the norm. If you ran into people who were environmentalists, yeah, there were a small minority among them that were, you could call them radicalized, or you could call them nutty, or whatever. That might, like, there were people that would tie themselves to trees or climb up a tree and live in it because somebody wanted to cut it down, or things like that. And there were people who handed out pamphlets. PETA did this, handed out pamphlets in front of children's schools with they were like chick pamphlets, only they instead of you're going to hell because you got Halloween candy, it's your mommy kills bunnies by putting lipstick in under their eyelids. And there were things like that, but it wasn't common. And now it's very common to run into somebody, mostly online, but even out in the real world, who has that level of extremism in their activism, in their area of interest, their area of political interest, rather than simply advocating, hey, you know, it's really rotten to abuse animals, and there are laws about abusing animals, we should follow those, and there are ways to avoid being abusive in our research, and we should be as humane as possible. Instead of doing that, you know, we have these people that feel like it's all right to walk up and hand a pamphlet to children about how your mommy kills bunnies, or throw paint on somebody's coat. And it's the commonness of it is much more pronounced now. And of course, the other thing is that kind of extreme attitude has sort of spread over into movements that previously really weren't. Like, when I was younger, when I was in high school, I didn't even know what a vegan was. I knew about vegetarianism, but for the most part, people who were vegetarians were just vegetarians. They didn't follow you around and demand that you stop eating things they didn't like. And even when I was in college, I ran into my first sort of evangelical vegetarian in college. She was a rarity among vegetarians. And it became, over time, it became sort of a thing for people to like, well, if this is a moral choice for me, and I've decided that the moral thing for me to do is X, I have to impose that moral outlook on everybody else, because it can't be moral if everybody doesn't adopt it. And so we've gotten to this point now where on points that are highly debatable, people are attempting to impose their morals and their ethics on everybody else. And, you know, I'm not talking about things like, is it all right to do something to somebody else, act against another person? It's things like, is it all right to eat meat? Is it all right to dress differently? Is it all right to listen to different music? You know, it's very much debatable whether or not those things are actually abuses, whether or not those things are actually wrongs. And it's it's not. It's to the point now where you can't even have that debate. You can't have that discussion because as soon as somebody adopts the other side of it, they hit that PCU level of as soon as you walk up to them, they respond to you with buzzwords and rage rather than giving you a chance to talk and taking the opportunity to talk to you.
Scott?
Oh, hey, yeah. I wanted to talk about what Hannah was saying about how their PCU is kind of a caricature of these people. It's a very blown out, exaggerated, representation. But the thing I wonder is if due to things like YouTube and online social media platforms, I kind of wonder if people now saw because these things become so popular, and you see these videos of people being extreme and acting in very exaggerated ways. I wonder if people see that sort of thing on platforms like YouTube, and they that becomes the norm instead of the exception. Because when back in the 90s, I was in school. I went to college starting in 91, and there were some people like that. I mean, they were the exception, though. They weren't the norm. I wonder if we've gotten to the point now where PCU is actually the norm because of the proliferation of online, social media and things going viral, and people spending so much time online and seeing that, and that becoming the norm now. So
Tumblr.
Yeah, exactly.
You could think of it as Tumblr rot.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that oh Christ, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh fuck yeah, no, but yeah, Tumblr. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm done there. Yeah.
Well, if you remember, pop back in. But yeah.
Yeah.
So I watched the film, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely intended to be like a, let's take this to its logical conclusion, this sort of trend, because being PC was kind of big in the 90s too. And then let's push it further. Let's go all the way. Let's really caricaturize it. Let's really exaggerate it for effect, for humorous effect, so people can laugh at how, kind of ridiculous it is. Of course, they couldn't have known that this might even, to some degree, have parallels where people are like, holy shit, this is a thing that in many ways is not far off. It's kind of like Idiocracy, where, when the film was made, you were like, oh, that's so dumb. I can kind of see it, but there's no way. And then you're looking now and you're like, holy shit, we might be heading there. But the thing about PCU that it stood out for me as a little bit ironic was that for a film that was supposed to be snubbing overly politically correct, people who were addicted to outrage and responded to any slight or any perceived racism, sexism, homophobia, meat eating, whatever, they would respond with violence. Because that's basically what they were looking to do, was beat that little kid up. That's why they were chasing him through like half the film. The ironic thing about it is the film has a lot of sort of PC stuff in it. Like Mad Cat had pointed out, the character that the guy who, I forget the actor's name. He was in films with Chris Farley all the time. Spader? No, I'm not sure. Whatever.
David Spade.
Yeah, David Spade. Yes. So David Spade plays like he's this sort of sniveling henchman character that it works basically like the pet of the dean or the woman who is in charge, and she's supposed to be the establishment. Yeah, and the thing is that him and his group called the Balls and Shaft, which is sort of like a nod to the the Skulls or whatever they were called, or like the Freemasons, or your typical super alpha all male fraternity that's all about, they're all rich white guy preppy types. They were essentially the big bads of the film, along with the woman that ran the school. And it kind of annoyed me that we still found ourselves looking at a bunch of white men as the villains. Because essentially what I felt like, in a way, was while the film was making a criticism of overly sensitive, politically correct types that fall into categories of being black or gay or female or whatever it is, or stoners, I guess they had a cause too. It was almost as though the film wanted to be the ones that could control who the anger should really be directed at. It was almost like they wanted to still make a statement that says, well, you know, those of you who are reacting in a way that is really over the top, and you know, you're getting offended at everything, and you're blaming the white man for every slight, and you're blaming men in general, or you just, you know, you have these really caricaturized opinions, and you know, these sort of this sort of slightly misplaced anger. Here's where it should be going. It should be headed towards all these white guys that have money and they have cars and stuff. And that part of it kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of kept it from being as good as it could have been, because it still kind of irritated me. Plus, the pit itself, and maybe this is a good thing because it kind of, like, I think of Gamergate in a way. The pit itself reflected a great deal of diversity too, right? There were women, and some of them were in a band, and there was a black guy, and he was like the friend, and you had, you know, a stoner dude, and you had Jeremy Piven, who was just like whatever, he's Jeremy Piven. And so there was a lot of variety in that group, and I think I guess they were supposed to represent the, I don't know, like the slackers that were essentially represented. They were basically meant to represent the most rational and middle of the road and moderate people on the campus. And I guess that we're supposed to see them as everybody else. But I thought, for me anyway, that was the thing about it that sort of like fell a little flat, was the fact that we still ended up looking at the white, blonde, alpha male dudes that came from rich families, and you know, they weren't very smart, but they got in probably because they had a trust fund or whatever. Those were supposed to be the enemy at the end of the day. And I wish they had, I know that it probably would be a lot to ask, but the reason why I had a problem with it, for me, was it was almost as though the people who made this film, they wanted to speak out against political correctness, but they also wanted to control, or at least make a statement about where that anger should be directed. So it was almost like they wanted to control that narrative, without, for fear of sounding like I'm taking it too seriously, because I know it's a comedy and stuff, but it's almost like they were still playing it a little safe. And one other comment I wanted to make about veganism, or about vegetarians that try to impose their beliefs on other people. It reminds me of a story. I used to live in an apartment. It was my first apartment when I lived on my own. It was a little studio, and for the first week I didn't have a telephone yet. And I met a neighbor, though, on my first day when I moved in. He was a super nice guy, and he lived in the building right next to mine. And I was really hungry, and I wanted to order some pizza for delivery. And I asked him if I could borrow his phone to order a pizza. And then he said, well, let me ask my wife if that's okay. And I was like, okay, sure. And his wife is a vegetarian, and she asked if I was going to have meat on my pizza. And I was like, well, yeah, I want a sausage pizza. Yes, I want meat on my pizza because I got friends over, and we're going to have a sausage pizza. She would not let me use the phone because I was going to put meat on my pizza. And I couldn't order a pizza through her. I had to find another way. So I thought it was really funny because the only thing I could say was, all I could tell her was, you didn't save that pig. It's still dead in the pizza place. But I guess, you know, I have to respect that. So that's all. I'm done. Hannah?
Well,
Actually, it's Rachel, and then
Yeah, I think both Rachel and Mad Cat are before me.
Oh.
yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation, is it not? This movie, and I did the math, is 21 years old. And so it's taken 21 years for a film satirizing political correctness in a small minority on college campuses of radicals, for that to become the norm, for it to become so bad on college campuses that comedians don't feel comfortable going there anymore because they don't want to be protested and they don't want to be harassed by this culture of political correctness. And that's, I think that says the most. But you have all of these different people going around these campuses, around the campus in PCU. And I'm really glad I got to watch this because this has actually been a film that has eluded me for years, for 21 years. I remember seeing the end of this film, catching the tail end of the film, and having no idea what film it was or what I was seeing, but catching the end with the concert and and David Spade's character getting chased around and people protesting and everything like that. But you know, Brian is right. These people are trying to control who is the bad guy here. I bet you anything, a ton of the women and the wominists, which are the group of very obvious, like, hardcore feminists on the campus, and the hardcore black activists and the vegans and everybody else. I guarantee you, some of them are trust fund babies, but they're portraying the small group of sniveling, coward, cis, white, heterosexual Republican guys as the bad guys. Not the people here who are trust fund babies who are complaining about all the world problems but not ever actually accomplishing anything. Not them. Not the ones who are just kind of engaged in a massive circle jerk. These particular guys over here are the ones who are bad just for being hateful, and not these other people who are also being equally hateful, but they just have a different political alignment.
It could be because at the time, I mean, being Republican might have been seen as the establishment at that time, but I was alive in 1994, and
yeah, me too.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, I don't know. I don't know what the political landscape was like at that time, though.
I was going to say,
was Clinton president? I mean, like,
yes, I was going to say more, but
1994, but this movie was made when Bush was still in office and still in the shadow of Reaganomics.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit more about this, though, but there were several things that were said, though, that kind of just stick in my mind. They were saying rape culture then. Oh my God! It was like the wominists were saying. I think they said something like phallocracy. They were saying all of the same kind of crazy shit that feminists today are saying, and it blew my mind to see a movie 21 years old of them portraying a stereotype, and the stereotype is being real now. And it just, I don't know what else to say, but the funny thing, though, to me is that it had several of the 90s other weird tropes that make no sense. Like, there's the group of, there's always the group of charming stoners who manage to live life without having any jobs at all, and still manage somehow to get by. Like, that's the ongoing trope that just makes no sense. That only happens in, like, the 90s. It's just, they're like, they were asked to, like, okay, well, our other option, we either have to throw this party to make up for all the damages that we've created by being as offensive as humanly possible as the rockers on campus, the rockers and slackers on campus, who everybody else has rejected. We have to decide whether or not to get jobs or to throw a massive party and then charge money at the door. Like, I gotta get a job. Let's go do the party. But I've forgotten where I was going with this. It's just it was so 90s. Oh, the dreads in this movie were powerful. The dreads were strong with this film.
Too.
It
almost felt kind of 80s-ish too, but I'm done. I'm getting out of the way.
Also, they had me on board with, in the credits, it said one of the actresses was Sarah Trigger, I think. I'm like, well, this movie has been triggered already. It's triggered someone. All right. Go on.
Well, I think it's a little fitting that we're doing this show now with what's happened recently on Twitter and 4chan, which is Piss for Equality. And I think that's worth mentioning that, in the movie, we had these people that would just stand up for any cause. And it's like the guy saying, "Free Nelson Mandela," without actually looking into the fact that Nelson Mandela was already freed by that point. And, and at the very end, it's like they're having a protest of not protesting. And these groups are so easily manipulable that they'll protest anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And 4chan was so clever in getting feminists to piss their pants and take pictures of it and put it on Twitter as an act of equality. And I think it was Gwen Lily Knight who said that these people spend more time about rallying for a cause than actually doing anything for the cause, that they'll do the bare minimum. They'll piss their pants and take a picture of it and post it online than actually do anything to actually help for equality. And this movie really shows that this group, there was that sign where it was like, stop the nukes, and then he turns it around and it's like, meat is murder. And that's all they're doing. They're doing the bare minimum just for the sake of doing it. And that these people don't really care about doing anything to actually help save the world. And I thought that, that was so beautiful in how they portrayed that and so fitting for right now about what's going on.
Actually, the people in the film are doing more than people today. Because at least they were out there, like, talking and holding up signs and chanting, even if they only did it for a week. Today, you can be an activist by just retweeting or sharing on your Facebook page. And holy shit, now you're a great person. Pat yourself on the back.
So Wreck-It Rolf from chat says Piss for Equality ended up being a 4chan hoax, which is pretty much the same as what happened with the free bleeding movement. That was a 4chan hoax too, and feminists picked it up and ran with that. So
quite literally on
4chan,
that one,
yeah.
Someone ran free bleeding.
So feminists are actually, I should say, 4chan is pretty good at getting feminists to mess themselves in the name of equality. But before we go on with the thing I was going to say, what exactly was this pissing themselves supposed to represent? What did they convince it? Did they actually give them
the idea is that when supposedly when a woman is being raped, and against her will, she might, like, out of fear, she might piss herself. So or soil herself in some way. And what 4chan was trying to say
to prevent rape, I suppose.
Yeah, to prevent rape or whatever.
Actually, there's actually a piece of advice out there that to do anything to stop a rape. One of the things that you can do is when they're trying to rape you urinate or defecate if you can, because that makes them less likely to touch you down there. And of course, feminists got offended over that. Like, the idea that you should have to come up with ways to potentially defend yourself against that particular of all types of attacks. Like, all the other types of attacks are excluded from this outrage. Just sexual violence. Only sexual violence. Coming up with ways to defend yourself against it is illegitimate. All the other kinds, especially like men who go through different types of violence, that's perfectly fine to give them advice on how to defend themselves. But don't ever advise women on how to defend themselves against an attacker whose designs are sexual, because all of a sudden, in that unique situation, you're victim blaming. But apparently, 4chan managed to actually demonstrate exactly how bad feminists are about that. If that was their thing and feminists adopt it, like the whole free bleeding thing. What was the other one? There was one about hating dads on Father's Day or something like that they came up with, and feminists picked that up and ran with it too.
And Father's Day?
Yeah, in Father's Day, that's what it was.
Yeah, actually.
And so, I mean, there's like the most gullible cause heads on the planet are third wave feminists and internet feminists. But the thing that I was actually going to speak to was what Brian said earlier about the rich white guys. I don't think that in the film the reason for being portrayed as bad guys was that they were rich and white. Because if you look, the first character you really encounter in the film looks just like them, but he's a different person than they are. And the difference between him and them is he did not act like having his suit and being looking respectable, possibly being rich and being white made him more important or better than other people. He was just a guy. He was just an ordinary average guy. And it's the same thing with the people in the pit. Like whatever their various life circumstances, whatever their various traits, they did not make those things the most important thing about them. They didn't limit their identity to a specific set of characteristics, a small set of characteristics that was not everything about them, and then impose that on the rest of the world as, you have to behave a certain way towards me because I'm this. And I think part of the reason that Tom looked the way he looked was to provide a balance against that rich white guys are evil, Republicans are evil being the whole idea. Instead of it being their life circumstance that made them undesirables, it was the fact that they were arrogant, self-aggrandizing assholes who saw abuse of privilege and lack of intellect in everyone but themselves, even though that's what they were doing. Kind of like aggros.
So the guys in the Balls and Shafts Society were as self-centered and narcissistic and even to a degree angry and hateful as the other groups were. But the difference was that they were also like okay to attack, right? Because like when I look at it, I see that there's a bunch of men and they call themselves Balls and Shaft, which obviously references manhood. And then you have the womanists on the other side. And they're basically the same thing. They attribute everything to sexuality, and them being females and them being victims. But the difference is that the womanists are treated as though something they don't learn from it, so they don't really get their comeuppance that much. Because at the end of the film, they end up chasing the guy from Balls and Shaft. That's sort of like how it ends in this cartoony way. And I don't know. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's something a little off.
Well,
there.
the difference is everybody else learns that there is something that they can get along. They don't all look down on each other. They're not snobs. They're not snots, and they don't look around at everybody else and necessarily continue to see everybody else's faults without seeing their own. They listen, and maybe they don't learn not to protest, but they do learn that they can have some level of unity, and they do learn that that hating on each other isn't necessarily the way to go. But what they have outrage over at the end was his behavior being the same that it has always been. He basically lets out this litany of vitriol where he badmouths everybody in the audience and everybody pretty much on the stage. And so he's basically he demonstrates that some people, no matter how you reach out to them, no matter what information you provide to them, no matter what they possibly could get out of life, some people are always going to just be assholes because some people simply refuse to pick up new lessons from life and try to improve themselves. And I think that the David Spade character was about that aspect, that tendency in everyone to want to hold on to like the misconceptions we have about other people, the negative misconceptions we have about other people that maybe can make us feel like, well, I'm a better person because I'm not like that. And to sort of make that how we learn to value ourselves instead of actually learning to value other people and sort of learn to value our relationships with other people and to learn to relate to other people and build our self-esteem on something else, on maybe the qualities that we can admire in ourselves rather than the things that we dislike about others, and our ability to relate to other people. So I don't think that the character was necessarily about demonizing a dynamic, a demographic of people. I think the character was more about demonizing a behavior. which, like I said, I was joking earlier, but that actually really is. If you look in hashtag Gamergate, you'll periodically see comments about it. The groups that are the people that come in to criticize Gamergate, aggros, various types of aggros, especially the abusive ones, will come in and they're constantly talking about straight white males this and straight white males that. And if you look at them, the vast majority of them are straight and white and male. They're looking at other people and proclaiming qualities, to exist that are actually there themselves. And it's like, it doesn't matter if they possess those qualities. They're still negative when other people possess them. And I don't know, it's the same kind of behavior. It's that same, I can see it in you, but not in me. And I can't learn if I don't see it in myself. And I can't be a better person or at least become able to relate to other people if I'm constantly looking down on everybody. And I think that was the thing that really made him the villain in this character. Was, do as I say, not as I do. Thank you, Scott. This is the do as I say, not as I do attitude. And that does get attributed a lot to Republicans, partly because people pay a lot of attention to Republican morality because Republican morality is centered on sex. It doesn't get noticed as much about Democrats, even though Democrats have their own morality issue. And their do as I say, not as I do is about money hoarding and irresponsible financial behavior and abuse of the little guy with respect to their own financial relationships. And Democrats do that all the time. Some of the wealthiest people in the United States are Democrats. Actually, the wealthiest people in the United States are Democrats. And a lot of them are old money. And they're exactly what that Hollywood portrays Republicans as in the movies. And it's actually kind of funny to see Republicans get that portrayal all the time. And then think about families like the Kennedy family, which is an old money family. So but yeah, that do as I say, not as I do attitude, that was really the reason why they were the bad guy.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think that what I was getting at was what you said when you mentioned how Hollywood characterizes essentially a political group, Republicans, but they usually also make them look like old white guys or young white guys in this case.
Or, Hollywood's been anti-Republican pretty much all my life. I don't think I remember a time when they weren't. And it's not just Hollywood. There's, a lot of, a lot of the performing arts community that does any kind of acting, singing, comedy. You'll see quite a bit of anti-Republican humor, anti-Republican, like the boot to the head song actually has being Republican as a reason to give a boot to the head in it. And it's stuff like that. And it probably can trace back to McCarthyism because a lot of the entertainment community, a lot of the visual entertainment community, the visual arts were targeted by McCarthyism. They were all, it like went right through that community. And it did happen the same way as witch hunts. People kind of fingered others, this person is a communist, this person is a communist. But that probably is the origin of a lot of Republican hatred coming out of that community.
Well, I wanted to kind of touch on something that you mentioned briefly, Hannah, and something that we don't see today but was featured in this film is that every one of these groups are kind of inclusive, that it's only their members within that they care about. Yeah, they show some hostility towards each other, but for the most part, everyone kind of leaves everyone alone, except the Pit, of course. That they're only interested in policing themselves and not really interested in what everyone else does. Now, yeah, you could say the causers are like that, but even then, they don't stick to anything longer than a week. They just move on to the next thing. They're only really caring about who's in their own group. I mean, and realistically, these groups don't even really care about the pit. The only person who cares about the pit is David Spade's character and the dean, who's trying to get everyone to go against the pit. That if this character was not there and just told them, look, you need to be responsible for yourself, no one would have really had a problem with the pit. Now, the feminists or the womenists did have a little bit of a problem with the pit directly, but they just, again, were protesting all about the penis and the phallicocracy, which is more legitimate than the patriarchy, in all honesty. But even they were just kind of going from one cause to the next. They weren't really trying to do anything except be who they wanted to be. And, you know, there was that one female member who was interested in the main character, Druz, I think his name was, but they were so quick to try to protect her and to say, no, you have to do things our way. We don't see that today because all of these groups try to infect themselves like a virus, like a parasite, to everything around them and say, you must change according to us. And I think that's the only thing that's unrealistic to what today is that the movie portrayed of how just by themselves, all-encompassing they are. Even the secret society with David Spade was very much like that. They didn't want anyone to know who they were or that they were pulling the strings from behind. They were happy to be invisible. So I thought that was an interesting clash to what it is today, that back then people just wanted to be left alone.
Oh, sorry. Oh, well, just to give a little bit of context to what Hannah was saying a minute ago about Republican hate, if you look back, you know, and I don't know how old our audience is tonight, but I was born in the 70s and, you know, in that time period. And back then, I think, you know, if you look at the Republican hate thing as opposed to about the arts and everything, they were actively back in the like late 70s, early 80s, and on to today. But back in the 80s, especially, there was a real big push for them to defund the NEA, which was the National Endowment for the Arts. It came to a head, I think, when I can't remember what the guy's name was, but do you guys remember the Piss Jesus? Does anybody remember that?
Yes, I remember the Piss Jesus.
Piss Jesus. It was a crucifix inside of a cup full of piss.
Upside down.
Yeah, and there were other things too. There was like, you know, Robert Mapplethorpe. Everybody was in a tizzy about his homoerotic artwork and his photography and all this kind of stuff. And Keith Henning, because, you know, he was an artist and he had AIDS and he was pro-gay or whatever, you know, and all this other stuff. So there is a you know, a foundation for that Republican hate in you know, creative circles, as it were, you know, be it Hollywood or in other places, because they have actively tried to, you know, just like women's rights, they've actively tried to throw a wrench in the works for that for decades now. So I think that might be another reason why they were, you know, used as the baddies in PCU. So.
Well, on the topic of Republicans and women's rights, I think part of the problem is that women's rights activists are calling things rights and entitlements that are not. Where they're talking about having the government pay for things as a right, whereas Republicans in general are talking about, you know, you can have access to most of these things without the government paying for them, and the biggest bone of contention is the abortion controversy, and that frequently gets characterized as anti-abortionists against women. And that's actually a false characterization of the controversy. It is people who believe that an unborn baby is a living human being, and people who believe that it is not. And the basis of that argument is all in semantics. How do you decide if something is alive? How do you decide if something is human and all that? But you can't really have that discussion because the people who believe that babies before they're born are living human beings have their side of the argument largely wrapped up in religion, and the people who don't have their side of the argument largely wrapped up in opposing the religious outlook. So there's never going to be a really satisfying discussion on that, I don't think. But it isn't really Republicans versus women's rights. It is more of the equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity, and a question of what the government should be funding and what the people should have to pay for versus people buying their own. And that's a debate that you could make probably an entire month of shows just on those topics, and whether or not, one side or the other is valid, and what's valid on both sides, and so on. Yeah, we accept social justice warriors as living things most of the time, but not necessarily always thinking things. But in any case, the thing is, what you're seeing in Hollywood is, and to a lesser degree in some of the other areas of the arts, is what happens when a political group is seen as attacking the interests of a group that has basically a pulpit.
Rachel.
I was gonna jump in. Yeah, there's a lot of different things going on here, and I think one of the things that's made parts of this movie a reality are really, to be honest, the job market, the way that it's changed, and the requirements jobs are now asking for. They want you all to have some college, and so now what's happened is student bodies have expanded. It's a requirement now, so more people have to go to college. But one of the things that has happened is that the people who did take the really, really useless degrees, which don't really have any other job options other than teaching, have stayed in the colleges over the past 20 years and are now basically teaching other people who have completely useless majors and convincing them that this is a viable job option. This is a viable major. Now compare PCU to another college film, Accepted, where the whole thing is based around the idea that people kind of drive themselves crazy now just to get into the right college, into the right school, and everything like that. And the plot of the movie Accepted is that these people say, fuck it, and they decide to take the money that their parents would otherwise have used on tuition and to do whatever the hell they please and to teach themselves whatever they want. So it's kind of like, to some degree, what they were discussing and the idea of in PCU, which is kind of like, oh, you can have a bullshit major, you can learn whatever the hell you want, but the message of Accepted is that these people, when able to focus on a specific skill without all of the other bullshit attached to it, they could actually achieve their goals. But they still had the exact same kind of they still had the exact same villain, to be honest. It's still the straight rich white guy. And I think that's just kind of an ongoing trope for all college movies, that the person who is the villain is the straight rich white guy who the underdog character simply needs to beat, basically. The polar opposite to the slacker hero. So, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
I think that we like to root for the underdog, and that's probably right.
Well, we all do. But the question is that, like, should we really be rooting for the person who's supposed to be the hero, because it's the person who has decided to be a slacker, essentially. They've decided that all of this situation is bullshit. Well, when PCU was out, I mean, if you were to just apply yourself, you probably would have been really, pretty much set. The guy was like in school for like 7 years. We don't even know what he majored in, to be honest, but he was certainly smart enough to be able to come up with things like term papers and to have like every single, basically to manipulate all of these other people. He could have basically had a ton of different job options, but now the slacker character has a different role, which is basically there's a sense of apathy because there's no promise that you will have any job options after going to college. None. Even if you get a really great major, even if you majored in something useful, there's no promise that you will have a job when you leave, and you will have a ton of student loan debt.
Well,
So the Slacker character is almost a response to apathy now, whereas back then it was just, eh.
you got to understand also that kind of represents the college debt bubble, where back in the 90s it was fairly common for people to not really think about college debt as something they wouldn't be able to pay off later because their job wouldn't make them enough money to pay it off. And you had a lot of different things. Well, for one thing, back in '94, if you got a job at, say, a GM plant, it would be your expectation that you could work. Oh, I'm sorry, Mad Cat. I thought you said you didn't have something to say.
Well, I did earlier, but then I said I wanted to respond quickly to Rachel.
Oh, I missed that in the middle of the rest of the... Well, let me really quick say this. Back in the 90s, if you got a job at a GM plant or a Ford plant or something like that, you could expect to work... Back then, you would think you could expect to work for 30 years, retire, and have a pretty cushy retirement. You know, today, well, there's a lot of GM plants that are gone. There's a lot of Ford plants that are gone. And it's very iffy to think that you could get a job at a place like that and go 30 years and retire. It's also iffy to think that you can come out of college and your employer will pay your college loans. And it's iffy. The other thing that's iffy is whether or not you can actually get the earning capacity from your job to pay for it, because college has gone up exponentially in comparison to other expenses in the world.
Well, I want to respond to what Rachel was asking, whether or not we should really root for the underdog in this story. And the answer is yes. And the reason why is because everyone should have the right to choose the life they want to lead, even if that's being a total slacker. And in this film, the problem is that there are many forces trying to work against that. Yeah, he's wasted his life doing 7 years of college and not really majoring in anything. But that's his choice. And this film is saying that if you don't fall into one of these groups, if you don't do what the administration wants, what the world wants you to do, then you're somehow bad and we're going to throw you out. It's more of a metaphor than reality, but it's that they're trying to take his choice away and say you must do this thing, and that's why we should root for the underdog, because he should have the choice to be a slacker.
Actually, I wanted to respond to that.
When you respond, after you respond to him, will you answer the question I posed to you in chat?
Okay. What are you gonna... Okay. Okay, actually, I'm going to respond to you, Hannah. The reason why I asked this question is because in PCU, the role of the slacker guy in college is completely different, because the opposition, the other situation, is that you have all these people with all of these completely useless majors and everything like that. And he even says, like, if you're really good at bullshitting, you can major in Game Boy. But the situation is that I'm trying to pose a contrast between the role of the slacker character in all of these different college movies. The reason why the slacker character here is a hero is that he's directly in opposition to all of these other crazy PC people, and he can easily see that these guys are basically full of shit. That's the only reason. If he didn't care, if he was incredibly complacent and just like gave no fucks at all and just said, would he really be the hero? And that's... he just would be any other person there. It's not really completely clear who the hero is. Is it the guy who just showed up out of nowhere and ran into all of these crazy things, or the slacker guy?
I'm not sure that the story actually has a hero now that you really ask. Because if you think about it, without the newcomer, without Tom,
yeah,
they would have failed completely. Because who brought all the guests to the party? And of course, without the rest of the house, the hero couldn't have been the hero. He had ideas, so the slacker is really just an idea man.
Yeah.
But if you look at different, like Real Genius,
Hmm.
the difference is very subtle in how it's portrayed. But both of the heroes in those two movies, what made them heroic is when they learned there was an area in life in which they could not slack. They basically had to take an action to solve a problem. They couldn't just write it out. They couldn't just sit back and let it ride and wait for it to solve itself. And they couldn't look to somebody else to fix it for them. They basically, like the whole let's have a party. We got to have a party or we got to get jobs. That's analyzing your situation, analyzing your choices, and deciding what is going to be the most profitable course of action with the least effort involved. And it's where I can't think of the main character's name in Real Genius. Just the guy played by Val Kilmer in Real Genius.
Chris Knight.
Chris Knight. He starts actually doing his work. He starts making an effort, but then of course he also he does his pranks and everything. He incorporates his pranks into it, but he starts doing his work. And Andrews, I can't think of the name of the character there either. I'm getting tired. That's bad. But he doesn't start. It doesn't show him start being more an industrious student, but he basically takes responsibility for his house. And while it's the same thing, it's more subtle in that you don't really see that he has taken responsibility. All you see is that he has taken charge. But he really has. He's taken responsibility. He's making the effort to see that everything falls into place. And then as soon as the shit hits the fan, they discover that it's not going to solve the problem. Their identity or their idea is not going to solve the problem. As soon as he gets another piece of information, he comes up with another plan. And he is the person who takes the action. He's the one that runs the show. So he is a slacker type, but there is a place in life for the slacker. The slacker in real life, the successful slacker, is not the person who lets everybody else do the work, who doesn't accomplish anything, who doesn't take care of himself. The successful slacker is the one who figures out the most efficient and low effort way to earn his way through life, so that he has time to do the things he wants and doesn't have to waste all of his energy on other people's interests. Yeah, like Han Solo, as Mad Cat says.
Well, I gather that. But I disagree with Mad Cat's suggestion that all of this was about someone trying to prevent him from slacking. In fact, the whole problems of the plot are created by an entire campus of people that get off by doing absolutely nothing, doing a lot of doing nothing. I mean, like you asked the question, like, would he have had a rewarding experience if he had just gone along with everything else and majored in something useless like Sanskrit? But that's the thing. The whole plot is built around this culture of just a complete useless circle jerk among these different individuals, and them reacting to that. Whole
what
culture.
I was asking with that was because you had the character, the Sanskrit guy was not a slacker. He was not considered a slacker. He was very industrious. He was very studious. He probably, going through and learning that and actually being in school, to get your to be doing a thesis, you're going for your doctorate. So you've had 4 years for your bachelor's, you've had 4 years for your master's. So you're in there for 8 years, and if I have that correctly, you're in there for at least 6 to 8 years. And what has he got? What's he getting out of it? He's getting a degree in something that is complex and was probably very intellectually challenging, and he probably had to work his ass off to get it. But what's he going to use it for? What's he going to
exactly? What is he? But that's the whole thing. Then the problem is really this entire culture around just college bullshit.
Oh, and that's just it. Which slacking is worse? The slacking where you recognize that what you're doing is sitting back and taking things easy, or the slacking where you spend a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of your mental processes and years achieving absolutely nothing.
Well, I think the situation is now I'm probably thinking of this from a different perspective, because like right now, somebody having that exact mindset is like massively fucked. But in the movie world of the 90s, where you can exist as the 90s slacker, which kind of defies all logic and reason, and somehow has a place to live and has money to buy drugs and all of these different things, but without ever having a job or means of income, can just sort of exist in this universe.
I'll be honest, I've lived with people that have done that.
I know, but like, like really?
Yes, I've
that
lived
even
with
work?
people that without working had money, and they didn't do anything, but they had money for drugs. It's just people give them stuff. They every so often they'll do an odd job here and there. They'll sell something. They buy more than they're going to use, and then they sell some of it to somebody else for more than they paid for it. Slackers. The true slacker always finds a way.
Well, the movie slacker tends to be, or at least the ones in the college films, are somebody who's a slacker not because they have any kind of higher like philosophy, but because they're fucking bored and nobody ever challenges them. They find themselves completely surrounded by idiots who are very easily manipulated.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they find themselves unchallenged, and so they say, fuck it. And that's, I don't know, kind of the way things are. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with any of that. But
Are you guys ready?
ready for what?
Yeah, I just I wanted to make one last thing, and then we'll close it out.
I just I came in because the chat is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on?
For those of you who don't know or are listening later,
It's distracting.
we have this persistent troll named Ad Veridenson. How would you pronounce that? It's Ad.
Infinitum?
No. It's Ad Verdician.
Okay.
And he comes on our chat and he talks about postmodernism endlessly, just constantly, and the homosexual agenda and postmodernism.
Okay.
Ad nauseum.
Every single chat, he's on there spamming the same stuff over and over and over again. But this chat, he's somehow become three.
3 people?
3 people. Now he's Ad Verdicen and Ad Nauseum and Ad Infinitum, and I think the Ad Nauseum and Ad Infinitum are actually trolling the original troll. So the chat is just erupted.
So, into trolling trolls.
Yes, it is just erupted into this, and it's fucking hilarious.
That's beautiful. That's just sublimely.
It's one guy with headmates, and they're all fighting for meetings right now. That's what it is.
Trollception.
Brian's true.
It's a bunch of his headmates fighting it out. Stop being a shitlord. Let them work it out. Eventually,
So
one
in other
ad
words,
will,
it's an ad cockfight.
yeah, one ad will rule them all.
There could be only one.
There may be that at some point the chat for this stream is just all ads. And I don't mean like ads as an advertisement, but just ads, as in headmates to this original Ad Verdicen.
Well, Ed Verdicen just declared he's not a troll. I just want everybody to know that.
Oh, okay.
Oh well, since he said so.
I'm sure that's what a troll.
I'm so convinced.
A troll would never say that.
There's nobody behind the curtain. I'm not a troll, obviously.
Well, I guess we'll just do that episode about postmodernism we've been promising for so long. At some point.
I think we're already having an episode about postmodernism in the chat.
It's some kind of episode.
Listen, I am not a troll.
Yeah.
Last time on Badgerpod Nerdcast. the Badgers were talking about PCU when suddenly a challenger appeared.
Anyway,
I would be just. I think it'd be hilarious if one episode we came on and the chat was like just all of them were ads,
like 100 of them.
Like 100 of them. And it was all just. We should do that postmodern episode. And if you're listening and you actually do the chat, when we do the postmodernism episode, make yourself an ad something account.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, come on the chat.
Yeah, let's make this topic completely meaningless by basically explaining it with everything. Postmodernism does everything.
Yeah, on the postmodernism episode, you have to be in the chat. You have to add something.
And this was the death of YouTube chat.
Yeah, it'll just implode into trolling trolls. All right, again, I'm gonna be quiet now.
All right. Well, no. The last thing I wanted to say about PCU was I think that you guys had already touched on it, but I think that in a lot of ways you have this main character, Jeremy Piven's character, and he's been in college for 7 years. He knows the system. Like he's got intimate knowledge of how broken it is, and I think as a result of that, it actually makes him kind of bored about graduating. And I'm reminded of, you mentioned Real Genius, and I also thought of another film just off the top of my head. I thought about Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and the reason why is because Kumar in the film, he's like this super stoner slacker guy that just wants, to get laid and go on adventures, and he's pretty much seems like someone who's not interested in his life. However, as the film progresses, you learn that he is incredibly intelligent and could easily be a doctor if he wanted to. But it's almost as though he's so intelligent that he's kind of bored with the idea, or maybe he just wasn't ready to grow up yet, or whatever. I remember they go into it. But point is, with Jeremy Piven's character, I think that and his the slacker kids, the pit members, it's almost also a critique on university itself. Because essentially you have all of these useless, majors, and that anyone can make whatever they want into their major if they can convince the dean, which is, what not only is what was going on in that film, but in a lot of ways you have a lot of people taking useless majors now, and they're spending a lot of money, or at least putting themselves in debt by going to university, and it's not really, it doesn't really give you as much as you would think to prepare you for the real world, other than giving you that sheet of paper, and that degree, which yes, companies look at, but I don't know that it's you're not really a more well-rounded person for it if you can educate yourself, especially in the modern age where you can pretty much learn everything you want off the internet itself. And I think that that was what they were trying to do, was probably criticize university in general with with all of that. So yeah, Hannah, thanks for mentioning that. A real university does not allow a student to stay if they're failing out of the classes. You can go to school for that many years, but not if you weren't progressing. I suppose I guess that's right. I know that some of the schools, like the one that I go to now, they'll let you stay for as long as you want if you keep paying. But that's a for-profit college, and that could be a whole other discussion, a whole other animal.
Well, but the question is, are you flunking out of your classes and they let you stay, or are you just not taking a lot of credits and they let you continue to attend? Because, I mean, they will allow a student to be less than full-time and take more years to progress. But if you fail to a bunch of classes, to make room for other students that want in, they will cut you out of your university. You will get kicked out of the university if your grade point average is failing.
Yeah. Oh, it might be a profit college thing, but I think you're right, because the university is concerned with its own image too, and it's only going to waste so many resources, I suppose. So. But anyway, so we should close up the show.
All right. Well, let's give a closing thought from Ad.
Yeah, sure.
Apparently, all of our dicks and vaginas are postmodernism.
All right, I'm all a tingle with anticipation at what he might comment on. I can't wait. I bet I can make a prediction. I think the word postmodernism might be in there somewhere.
He might just be ad-libbing.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
All right,
You know,
Bill.
Can I shill something really quick?
Yes, Hannah, go.
After this is over, and you'll have to watch Otter Jesus' feed on Twitter for this because I don't actually have a link to it or anything, but he's doing an interview with me after this at about 7:30 Eastern.
And that's to get the stream. It's the stream. Oh, sorry about that. It's Andrew Gleason at Andrew Gleason on Twitter. To find the structure.
At Andrew Gleason. And Ad has his, well, Ad Infinitum said, my penis broke free of the chains of pseudological postmodernism. Called it. Are you fronting Ad Infinitum? Are you the front right now? Or are you
oh god!
Still fighting for dominance?
That was the best fucking quote ever. You know what? I miss the time when trolls were troll dolls, okay? And they had like the little jewels in the tummies, and if you rubbed the jewel, like you got a wish and shit. Like I was like 5 years old, and I wanted one of those so bad because they were like a cool thing, and I wanted all my wishes to come true. And so that was
Rachel, you found a box of Lucky Charms and rubbed that for your wishes.
That's not the same, man. It's not the same as, like, I don't know, touching a troll doll inappropriately.
I mean, if you got a box...
You heard it here, folks. She wants to touch trolls inappropriately.
Well, I think trolls want to touch her inappropriately, so at that point it's consent.
That too. I've seen the chat. I know what you guys are writing.
All right.
Cyril Flem, we notice you. They want to be noticed by sending.
What do you think, guys? Should we do postmodernism next week?
I wouldn't know. I don't. That seems like a broad concept.
You haven't taken postmodernism in your art course?
It seems like it's everything according to Infinitum.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, if we do postmodernism, how are we going to know when to show up and what channel to be on?
Well, we'll just have to we'll have to have a structure to our postmodernism that includes the correct channel and the correct time.
Yes, but how are we defining correct?
Yeah, exactly. You know
right.
what? You know, here's the thing. We're having that show like right now in another dimension.
You guys are way too smart for me.
Prove that we're not.
Oh, this is going to be a fun show.
You can't prove we're not.
Are you ready?
I feel like we're in the Twilight Zone.
Does this mean I have to look up all my old conversations with feminist bees from Reddit?
Oh, maybe. But we could do a split show. We could do Top 10 Plot Holes and Postmodernism.
Oh, Plot Holes, yeah.
Top 10 Plot Holes, Postmodernism.
I thought you said cuckolds and postmodernism. I was like, I want to be on that show.
Well, you could be on the show, too. It's called every show.
Cuckolds and modernism. I like it.
Oh, my.
Or postmodernism, excuse me.
Cuckolds.
Oh, the cucks.
Here, hold this cuck.
The four cucks.
Cut.
Oh,
all right, so let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Allison, do you want to shill the?
Let's explode in a dust cloud of silliness.
Yes.
I think the silliness has already come. So yeah, if you enjoy what we have to say, and you enjoy how we say it, and even if you like to troll our chat hilariously with I don't know what postmodern whatever. Do consider becoming our patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And every bit helps to make the fun continue, and continue, and continue, and continue, and continue, and continue.
Ad nauseum.
And continue, and continue, and continue.
If you want her to stop, put money in a Patreon.
Wait, Allison, you're not done yet. Keep going.
And continue, and continue.